So after being put into bat, 192 is what the Mumbai Indians have got. It's a really important game for both sides at Hyderabad. On ESPNcricinfo T20 Timeout, we look back at that innings held together by Cameron Green, who registers his first IPL half-century. Matt Roller here, so too Tom Moody. 192 then, Tom, about 9 above par?
Yeah, I think it's just a fraction, isn't it? But it's a good total, isn't it? And I say that for a couple of reasons. One is the surface itself looked like it offered a little bit for the bowlers, both the slower bowlers and also the pace bowlers, when the right length was bowled in both cases there, but also, more importantly, when you took pace off the ball, when the quicker bowlers took pace off the ball, it seems like it just sat in the wicket a little bit. So it'd be interesting to see if there is any dew and whether that continues. And most importantly, Mumbai have taken notice of that.
Yeah, obviously there would have been someone in the ears of the team management or the captain pre-game, Matt, someone like you would have said, let's not play Umran, let's play the extra spinner. And 8 overs, 68, no wickets though, between Markande and Washington Sundar. What do we make of that?
Yeah, I suppose when you put it in that light, it doesn't look particularly great, does it? The lack of that X-factor point of difference bowler through the middle. But that said, you know, I think Sunrisers went okay when they took the pace off, and I think from the evidence we've seen, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets slightly better to bat under lights. That's a common trend in the IPL that we, see throughout most seasons, is that run scoring becomes easier in the second innings, and I think that's why so many captains opt to chase so often. So I think maybe Sunrisers will be regretting that decision not to have the high pace bowler through the middle, but equally, I don't think they'll feel they're out of the game by any stretch, chasing this sort of mid-190s score. Well,
even Jansen and Natarajan, even though they're not that pace, did go for plenty. What do you make of that, Tom? Do you sense it was still the right call, looking at what we've seen on the surface, and would you have expected more out of at least one of your two spinners?
I thought it was an unusual decision to leave Umran out, purely because even now that you've got the luxury of an impact sub, it just doesn't make sense. You know, he's an X-factor cricketer, and the impact sub allows you to play both your impact players with bat and ball. So you're effectively playing 12. Samad is the batting impact, and Umran, you would think, is your no-brainer bowling impact. And the other thing with Hyderabad, it's a big ground.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not a bad ground for him to be, to be bowling, because he has got the protection of big square boundaries. And we also know the value of wickets, taking wickets in the middle phase. And if spin's not doing it, generally high pace does it. And I think they closed that door, which is a door they probably shouldn't have closed. Yeah,
let's put in another set of permutations, assuming they don't want to go the Samad Umran way. Natarajan is clearly the preferred seamer to Umran Malik. Now, could that be swapped around? Just looking at Natarajan's form, who started all right, 1 for 23, I think it was, 1 for 32 rather, 2 for 23, beg your pardon, against Rajasthan. And then in the last couple of games, none for 40, 1 for 54, and today 1 for 50. And it's not only the figures, is it fair to say he's not bowling at his best?
He's certainly not bowling at what we're certainly used to seeing him bowl. And I don't think, to answer your question around whether there's a swap there between Umran and Natarajan, I don't think that's the case, because they're two very different bowlers. Natarajan's basically employed as a defensive bowler. What the conundrum that Natarajan is going to give the selectors is more to do with affecting the overseas option, whether you go for Marco Jansen or you go for Farooqi, because Farooqi can comfortably cover what Natarajan does as a defensive bowler. So it may well push Marco Jansen out of the side to enable them to cover the poor form of Natarajan.
All right, time will tell, and whether Marco Jansen's batting also has something to do with this decision, we'll find out. It'll take some chasing, and it's a good score, as Tom and Matt point out. Cameron Green at 3 today. So clearly they're surprising us. He started at 3, then suddenly became a finisher in chases, and now he's back at 3. But he'd take that innings, 64 or 40, even though it didn't start well. Yeah, absolutely. I think, we I suppose we talk a lot about anchoring innings at the moment, and that felt like a very modern way of anchoring an innings, where you sort of start at 120-odd strike rate with the intent to hit boundaries, but making sure you give yourself a bit of time to play yourself in, and then really exploding towards the back end. I thought the thing that Green and, to an extent, Tilak Varma as well did really well was
having a couple of really big overs. I think there was a 20 run over and a 21 run over off Natarajan and Janssen. And I think we hear players talk about this a lot now in terms of the impact that can have psychologically in terms of breaking the game open. We used to talk about sort of smart cricket and making sure you got off strike after hitting a boundary, whereas now it feels like there's a real trend towards people targeting big overs, and once the bowler's under pressure, making sure that they know what they're going to do next, what their ball is that they follow up with, having been hit for a boundary, and sort of have that information ready and can sort of premeditate what's going to happen next.
Do you sense, though, that he got away with it a bit, Cameron Green? He was 7 of 12 at one stage, struggling against spin. I was surprised they didn't send Surya Kumar Yadav after the last innings that he had to carry on what looked like a challenging surface. It also meant Tilak Verma, who's in red-hot form, comes in a bit later. So how do you assess the move? And after it's all done, the innings?
I don't have a problem with the move because clearly that was their plan right from the beginning, really at the auction. That they saw Green as someone that could bat at the top of the order for them and bowl at least 2 of the phases. So, yeah, look, I don't have a problem with that. Yeah, look, he got a little bit stuck to begin with, but, I think it was also him adjusting to the conditions. That it was very different. The ball seemed to be sitting up, particularly off Washington Sundar early on, and he faced quite a few balls off him where, Sundar does deliver the ball from, as I would say, midnight, so very high action. He's a tall lad, gets that steep bounce. It's quite hard to come down at that and hit through it. And the only time that generally he does get punished is Sundar, is when he bowls fractionally too short and it sits up. But tonight he got his length right.
All right. Tilak Verma, some player, and that's another little cameo that has you impressed.
Yeah, he's an absolute jet, isn't he? I love watching him bat. He seems to be have a head well above his, head on his shoulders well above his age. He's got that sense of maturity about the way he navigates his innings. He never seems to be flustered. He's got the shots. If he needs to play, pull the trigger and play a couple of big shots, he's got that and does it very comfortably. He's got, it's a bit of an understatement, but he's got a big career ahead of him, hasn't he? Not only for Mumbai Indians, but for India.
Okay, I'll come to that. 84, 22, 41, 30, all in good time, and 37 of 17 today. He's clearly Mumbai's most consistent batter. That's not something we see from that batting lineup, as good as it is. Consistency is not something we could say we see from them. Yeah,
and I think we've also seen him be consistent now across a season and a half, because I think since the start of last year's IPL, I saw the stat during that game that he's got the most runs out of any batter in the middle overs, which is a pretty incredible thing when you consider how difficult even very good players have found that role, coming in at 3 or 4 after the power play and sort of continuing that intent, and particularly in a team that's not always had it easy. I mean, Mumbai were 4 wins from 14 last season, so it's not like he's come into a side that's flourishing. So yeah, he's really impressive, and also has incredible sort of aesthetic and style, doesn't he? Like, batting in the cap against the spinners, and incredible pair of wrists. So yeah, he's fun to watch as well as pretty effective.
I know you don't throw that term loosely when you say an uncapped player who's got a bright future for India, given the long line of players that are there. So why don't you elaborate a bit more as to why Tilak Verma is the serious deal?
I think he's got a solid technique. To me, it looks like he's got a very good game against pace bowling. So defensively, he looks very, very much at ease. He's got a good game both back and front foot against genuine pace, which is what you need to climb the international ladder. He's clearly a very, very good player of spin, which is going to be a reasonably important tool for him playing cricket in this country, the majority of his cricket in this country. I'm surprised to see he's only played 7 first-class games, which I can't get my head around. And he's done that pretty well anyway. He's averaging over 40 there, but he's played more A-list games, 50-over games and T20 games where he's shooting the lights out. So to me, he's got the complete game. And when you look at a player, look, I don't know him at all. I've never had a chance to sit down and have a chat to him, but I just sense that he's a player that seems to have a very good head on his shoulders and understands his own limitations in his own game. And he's been put into many pressure situations, given Mumbai's adversity over recent times where he's been involved. But he seems to have breezed through that with flying colours, and that's not the easiest thing to do for a young player, because quite often young players go missing when the leaders of the pack aren't, showing the way, but he's the one that's been the leader of the pack during adversity.
Very strong words and high praise for a player who's also just 20. It's also familiar ground for him. He's an Andhra boy, he was born in Hyderabad. He's not played a lot of first-class cricket, but did make his debut at 16, did Tilak Verma. He's only 20 now, and he's got Tom Moody's vote of confidence. Let's talk second innings and what we can likely see. Mark Boucher said in that interview that we could see Dew come in. I wonder if that reflects the thought process that even though it seems like it's a good day to play an extra spinner, of which Mumbai have to, that they may still go with Riley Meredith?
Yeah, I would imagine that they'll bring Meredith on most likely for a top order batter. I think they'll go that way. It'll be interesting to see exactly how they structure it up with the two left armers who you'd think will probably take the new ball, and Behrendorff and obviously Tendulkar in his second game, but sort of fulfilling similar-ish roles. But I, as I said in the pre-show, I'd be very tempted to have a look early on with an over or two of spin in the power play just to test out what. I don't by any means think that Brook is weak against spin, but when you pair him with Agarwal, I think that's probably the time in the innings where you could consider bowling a spinner early on and see whether that works.
Would that make sense, Tom, to wait, not bring in the impact sub just yet? Anyway, Meredith doesn't bowl a lot in the power play. Would you sense that you'd wait a bit and see maybe I could, if there's no Dew after the 10th over, I could perhaps introduce an extra spinner?
I don't think they can afford to. I think Meredith has to come into that side because they don't have the bowling for the back 10 overs. They might have the bowling for the first 10 overs to navigate, that with spin and a little bit of Tendulkar, but Tendulkar only bowled 2 overs last game, and you wouldn't want to be, I suppose, relying on or banking on his 2 overs at the death as one of your death specialists when, he didn't even complete, his first 4 in the very first game. So I think Meredith is definitely inked in as the one to come in.
And that, I think, has already happened. Tilak Verma has been substituted, Riley Meredith is on. So that takes away the conversation. Funny though, they have a number of options. And Tilak Verma, even Tim David, they tend to bowl a bit of off spin. They've impact sub Surya out. It's handy to have those batters that bowl off spin, or is that just not as tempting anymore with the impact sub?
Well, I don't think you need it, do you? Because you've got more of your specialists doing that role. And, that was I suppose, one of the downsides of this impact sub is that in a way it's going to create a huge void between, the genuine all-rounder and the batsman that can bowl, a bit of part-time, whether it be medium pace or spin. So, there's no need for it now. Yeah. So a Tim David, who I know for 2 years has been working on his off-spin, it's become redundant now. There's no real motivation for him to develop that skill to be a 6th bowling option.
And it'll be interesting to see how Mumbai manage this through the season, because we've already seen they took off Surya in one of their early games, and David was the impact sub for a couple of games as a batter, and now Tilak Verma's gone off. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage that, because none of those players are sort of easy to tell you're going to put your feet up for 20 overs. I think David was asked about it the other day and said, you have to accept it's your role for the team, but he considers himself to be a pretty good fielder, often in the hot spots at long on or long off. And as Tom says, he's worked pretty hard on his off breaks as well. So that combination, then telling him, sorry, mate, you're not needed, it's something that they're going to have to manage well over the course of the season, I think.
Arjun Tendulkar does have the new ball in hand, second successive game. We'll see if he gets more than just the 2 overs that he got at the Wankhede on his IPL debut. But we also saw, Tom, and I think you made the point that perhaps that they were, KKR in the last game were guilty of not giving Harry Brook enough spin early on. Looking at the spin options Mumbai has, it's not like Piyush Chawla bowls a lot in the power play, but is that something you'd like to see?
Yeah, look, it's an option. I think first they need to explore to see whether it's going to swing, because the 2 left arm options they've got rely on swing. Behrendorff has got as good a record as anyone in power play overs historically, and not so much just IPL sample, but in his T20 career. So I would explore that completely first, and then definitely look at spin.
Curious that amongst the 2 left-armers, Behrendorff was ill last game, but Arjun still takes the new ball. I think Jason Behrendorff would almost always bowl with that first over. Does it not make a difference, 1 or 2?
It does make a difference if you ask the bowler. I know that if Behrendorff probably had the choice, he'd rather bowl the first over, because it is a very, very narrow window to how long that white ball swings. So he may well get, the option to get the 3rd over that's swinging as well. So if Berendorf's bowling the second over and the fourth, maybe the swing's gone by the fourth over.
Well, he's only a Berendorf. All right, predictions. Matt.
I think Sunrisers will do this with an over to spare.
Oh, Sunrisers will do this with an over to spare. That's a bold prediction. Tom, are you going to? Would you agree with that as bold?
Who you think is getting the runs?
I think they'll share them around. I think Markram's in good touch though.
Okay. I'm actually going to go with Mumbai here.
Wow.
Yeah, I think we're going to see what I think is an upset, because I think Sunrisers on paper is a better side than Mumbai, and I think Sunrisers also had the advantage of winning the toss. I think that is an advantage. But I might change my mind now, because he's...
One ball, one boundary from Harry Brook makes you think now.
No, but yeah, I think it is an advantage to win the toss in this particular game. But I think that's a big total, and I think that Sunrisers might just stumble at the end.
You're also trying to think, if there was any other bowling attack, would you have more confidently backed the team to
without a
defend?
doubt.
Yeah.
But without a doubt.
And do we have the kind of seamers that can do what Bhuvaneshwar Kumar did? You didn't mention him, but 1 for 31 clearly used his experience and variations well. Do Mumbai have that kind of seam bowling lineup that could do that?
No, nowhere near compared to what Sunrisers' bowling attack can offer, and that's the biggest challenge for Mumbai and a couple of other teams. To be fair, in this tournament, there is a couple of teams very light on the depth of quality of their bowling attack.
All right, simple as that. Let's see. We still haven't had that super over I've been calling for every night. Tom, would you like to dismiss that as dispassionately as you did yesterday?
No, I said it's going to be close, so we might well be tonight might be the night.
At least I've got you on the table. Yesterday you had no interest in an RCB-CSK super over, but Tom Moody does believe it could happen. The Matt Roller is backing Sunrisers in the form of Aiden Markram and Harry Brook to do this, so it should make for a fun post-match analysis on ESPNcricinfo T20 Time. Remember, big game. You want to be 3 out of 5 wins and not 3 out of 5 losses. One of those teams will feel a lot better after this game in Hyderabad has concluded. Download the ESPNcricinfo mobile app. It will have you covered with everything around the IPL, of which there's plenty these days from different camps and whatnot. And we shall see where these teams stand at the end of this game in Hyderabad. So see you then.